I'm Selcuk Artut. By the way, we're from Istanbul, both coming from this Sabancı University. Indeed, I was the vice chair for the ISEA event in 2011, way back. It's great to be back in ISEA again. And I also would like to point the audience interest into this book very quickly. Small ad. Technological Art Preservation. I'm one of the editors of the book. I'm going to hand it around so that you can look inside. So I'm running this research project called Technological Art Preservation, which is headed by the university. Indeed, the cover will be a nice link to our presentation. The photo that you're about to see has been photographed by the author, the photographer, I call multimedia artist called Teoman Madra. And we're going to talk about his archive. Okay, so then that was kind of like a sign to the next thing on our agenda. So right next to me, yes, please. Right next to me, Begüm. She's doing her master's degree. First year is about to finish. And this project was my kind of like artistic investigation, exploration about what has happened before my generation. I'm an artist working heavily, intensively, doing things with technology. So then Begüm joined, so she's also contributing to this research. So better, we should move on. So the manuscript that we're about to present stands as it's indeed the first presentation, the debut academic dissemination of the intensive archiving process of the Turkish multimedia artist Teoman Madra, who created multimedia artworks between 1960s and 2000s. The cataloging process and the methodologies implemented for descriptive analysis will be discussed in detail. So as I said, 15 minutes of time, very short for our presentation, but I will be delighted to hear more comments. If you can stop us and talk, we'll be very happy to go into further details. But to give you an insight about his career, he was born in 1931. He's a living artist. He's still alive. He went to the United States in the 50s to study his undergraduate education, but his interest in contemporary art and avant-garde jazz music grew during his education in California and New York between 50s and 54s. In 55, he bought his first photographic camera, Voigtlander with a V, from a major during his military service in Turkey, and he started shooting experimental photographies. And in his own words, he defines himself as a fluxus artist literally after 1962, thanks to this camera that allows superimposing one after the other. I'm going to show you some of his works. And he has been doing lots of collaborations with music composers in the past. On your right-hand side, I think we're blocking a few, but you might see some of his experimental photography works. He also exhibited his pieces elsewhere mainly in Europe as well. During the 70s, he tried to interact with multiple senses with live music and a movement in the multimedia shows he organized, and he called them as synesthesias. And I'm here about to present you one of the works he did in the 80s, because in the 80s he owns a computer called Amiga. I bet you are familiar with the name. And then he created all these amazing works back then. And I love this video especially because you can see that he's getting a lot of like error messages, not enough memory for operation, but he still tries on. And another nice presentation about his works in the past in the 80s. This is kind of like showing you the making of it, because as you can see, he's in between like mixing analog and the digital, because there's a feedback loop of an analog capture from a TV, which is creating the background, and he's using, I think, the same app, the Deluxe Paint, to create all the generative images on top, layering. So, as an artist, he was unknown for a long time. His works were under dust, thick dust left somewhere. As I said, my personal investigation has brought me his name, and then I went and talked to his wife, and then I was pointed to an archive. which has never been archived before. And she told me there are a bunch of CDs, but indeed not bunch of, like thousands of CDs. 15,000 of the other negatives and like 400,000 of videos. They all have been captured and digitized by myself. Indeed, so they're in good hands and safe. In the early today, we had the presentation from the Madra. I think they are in kind of like a consultation resolution, but which is about to be going into more detailed resolutions, because this archiving process is about to become an exhibition in the very near future. And we're going to talk about our preservation strategy. The first one is the initial step of archiving the Teoman Madra works. Indeed, was attempted in January 2021, a year ago, in his hometown Ayvalık. The existing materials were in like VHS, Betamax, negatives and prints, and all sorts of analog media, and also digital floppies and such. Several digitization processes have been implemented with different techniques due to varying medium necessities. Would you like to take on from here?
Yeah.
Okay.
Due to the vastness of Madra's archive, we started by exploring the content of the materials at hand at first. As we have been getting familiar with the archive, we asked the question of what am I cataloging as recommended in the cataloging cultural objects manual. Firstly, I would like to indicate that we include only the archival process of the static images and the linear temporal multimedia works within the scope of this paper, but there is much more than that in the archive. And secondly, Madra's archive doesn't solely include his artistic creations, but many artworks owned by other artists, and also his commercial productions exist within the scope of his archive. So you can see an example documentation of Ben Patterson's Fluxus Happening that was filmed by Madra.
So Ben Patterson here is conducting a bunch of apple eaters, as you can see. That was super unexpected, that while we were digitizing all the material, we realized that he was the man with the moving camera. So he was shooting all these recordings. So they are extremely important to represent an archive of the art scene in the 90s of the Turkish contemporary scene.
Because of that importance, we didn't eliminate these kinds of recordings from the archive. We found them valuable for the sake of continuity and historicity. Rather, the dual nature of the recordings, whether the possibility of being the documentary or artwork in itself, was taken into account while building the field database for cataloging.
Next again.
And after we agreed on what to be cataloged, we started to analyze the data standards starting from the data structure. For the data structure, we chose CDWA schema because of its allowance for integration data to other systems, and also its precision with its comprehensive categories for cataloging. After that, for the data values, we decided to use the Art and Architecture Thesaurus by the Getty Research Institute. And lastly, for the data content, we are following Cataloging Cultural Objects Manual, as I mentioned before. And as an example, we start the cataloging with dia negatives once we establish our framework and build our database. You can see an example image from Madra's archive on the slide alongside with its descriptor identifiers. We firstly indicate the file type included in the database, which is an image in that case, followed by the name of the digital image file. The titles of artworks remained untitled, followed by consecutive index numbering, since there are no specific names given by the artist himself in most of the cases. The description is provided as light games, since Madra describes these kind of photography series as such. The format of the original analog media is dianegative, and the medium is specified as photography. In the subject field, we only distinguish between whether a record is an artwork or documentary. However, as it will be discussed in the future work later, it will be enhanced more once we build our subject tree, in other words, the classification schema. And the conservation history is none, since no effort was put for the sake of preserving Madra's work until Selcuk Artut initiated this preserving his archive project. And the related textual references field remains unknown for now for all the records, because while we are expanding our database by adding the records of the work, we are also working on gathering and classifying the written documents as well. These documents include exhibition catalogs, artist statements, or newspaper clippings, and the necessary references will be provided once we are done with our research on these written documents as well. And for the video recordings, the examination step of video recordings, the digitized versions of Betamax, Media's, and etc. required further feedback from us. Because each video file doesn't only contain a single record, but many, due to the user's intention to fill the memory of analog media. That being the case, we aim to cut each video file into multiple coherent pieces concerning the artist's intention of creation. In general, the partition operation was performed based on the empty tape displaced in between the video records. If not so, the pieces were arranged according to the content of the scenes, their visual style, or the musical compositions the artist arranged. The obtained pieces were uploaded to the previously obtained cloud service while keeping them together in the same directory with the original recording untouched. And you can see an example from our fielded database, and you can see our metadata element set. As you can see from the table, we named the partition files by adding consecutive numbering at the end of their original file name. The title of the works remained untitled, as in the photograph, unless there is a specific naming done by the artist within the scope of the video recordings. Descriptions are also provided in line with the content of the video, the information given within the scope of them, and also with the help of the chosen words from initially decided tag cloud, such as geometric art, generative art, etc., as we decided on at the very beginning of our research project. I think we can continue with the future work. What will be done in the future is in the continuation of this project. Firstly, the works of Teoman Madra produced with the iPad in the 2000s, which he started to use frequently in the last stages of his active artistic production will be examined and will be added to the database by following the previously explained structure of cataloging. After we examine all the digital media, the subject tree, in other words, the classification scheme, will be constructed following the content of the whole Teoman Madra archive, since it will be fully observed at the end. While doing so, the Art and Architecture Thesaurus by Getty Research Institute will be the guiding light. In that stage, the polyhierarchical approach will be taken so that the same subcategory will be accessible under various categories. We believe that this approach will provide more flexibility in the categorization of such digital environment, with its allowance for several routes that users can follow. It can be suggested that our cataloging process is biased in a sense that it depends on our judgment while providing descriptions for the work, while partitioning the video files and etc., and classifying them according to our judgment. And also, as we have seen in the examples provided, there are missing fields in identifiers due to the lack of information. To solve both issues,
1 minute left.
We will arrange gatherings with whom may be concerned, such as artists. Madra was collaborating with creators, art critics of the time, and musicians, so that in such gatherings, the cataloging records will be open to discussion, and hopefully missing gaps will be fulfilled, and more unbiased approach will be taken regarding Madra's works.
Yes, you can see there are thousands of works to be done. One thing to be on our hot agenda is an exhibition is soon coming. That is to say, all these works under the archive has to be coming in front of the audience, and hopefully we will get more attention to our project. Thank you.